everyone, welcome to the PH Nutrition Podcast. I'm Coach Chloe and today I'm joined by Coach Loz and Coach Tom. Hey guys, how are we doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks guys. I'm excited for this one. Today we're going to be talking about nutrition for morning training, more specifically first thing in the morning. So if you're getting straight out of bed, going straight into your training session, what do we do about our food? So we're going to start by just kind of going over the specifics that we're going to cover today. So we're going to give you some practical tips for before the workout, some practical tips for during, practical tips for the night before, and then what kind of types of food to have. And I'm sure we'll have some great conversations around this because I know all three of us have experience training super early, and Loz, especially, you're coaching people that are training super early too. So going to be great to pick your brain on this one. Okay, so I'm going to start off by going to Loz. Tell us some common signs that you see perhaps in your athletes at the gym where you can tell that they haven't got their nutrition for their morning training on point.
Honestly, it's normally towards the end of the session that you kind of see the effects of not having enough in your system before sort of what you've had before you've trained. So one in particular I find is that they kind of get to sort of that halfway through the workout. So at Slavum, the way our class is generally structured is we have a nice strength portion before, whether it's sort of Olympic lifting, bench press, squatting, maybe sometimes some sort of strength piece, and then a short sort of 15-20 minute workout. And it's usually towards the midpoint to the end of the workout where I can sort of tell who hasn't eaten enough. Okay, they slow down, they take longer breaks, and then by the time they get to the end, they look absolutely depleted, absolutely dead. And then when you have a bit of a chat to them after, I always know the answer what I'm going to get. It's like, well, what happened in the middle of that workout? And it's, I didn't have time to eat anything. So yeah, that sort of sluggishness towards the end, and then looking at that total look of depletion at the end of their session is generally gives me a bit of a clue as to what's been going on, either immediately before or even the night before. So yeah.
The look of depletion, yes, absolutely. Tom, I know that personally you train super early in the morning. What about I know you're very on point with your nutrition. However, have you kind of got any signs that you can tell if you've not quite fueled properly for that morning session?
Definitely agreeing with Loz. It's often a time management thing. And I think anybody who gets up early, when that alarm goes off, we sometimes try and shave off tasks that we're going to do so we can spend a bit longer in bed, right? We've all done it. We're like, right, if I don't do that, that's an extra 3 minutes. If I don't do that, or maybe we've hit the snooze alarm one too many times. And I find if I'm chasing my nutrition, then I find that session can be sometimes a little bit substandard of where I want it to be. So simple things in terms of either, eating too close to the workout, so I feel a bit uncomfortable when I'm training, or getting up too late so that I can't eat enough. And obviously something that is so easy to neglect when training in the morning as well is hydration. So getting up and making sure that I'm adequately hydrated and I've also got enough electrolytes on board to perform well either in the gym or if I'm out on the bike or on a run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that I've seen this in myself and I've seen this with clients as well, is a big sign that we're not kind of getting our morning training nutrition correct if we train that early, is that it carries over later in the day, doesn't it? So when people say, I get an afternoon slump or I'm craving sugar at 3 o'clock, often it's not about the afternoon, it's actually about what you've done in the morning. So I think we see this a lot more in people that get straight out of bed and train on an empty stomach, perhaps with not as much the night before, and then it carries over to the rest of the day. So hunger catches up with us, doesn't it? Okay, so like you said, Tom, we can be chasing the alarm in the morning or wanting to kind of have a bit more time that we don't want to be preparing food. So what are your practical tips you'd give us for getting in food for that workout first thing in the morning, just before?
Now, there's always going to be a little bit of trial and error here when it comes to finding what works best for you. But as anyone who listens to this podcast knows, and anyone who kind of follows the kind of PH mantra, that sometimes simplicity is key. So starting with something that is super easy for you to eat first thing in the morning. So if you've got to get up and you're half asleep and you're kind of, trying to put your gym kit on and get everything sorted before you get out the door, starting with a small carbohydrate-based snack could be the easiest thing to do. And it's also the easiest thing to potentially add to your food shop. If you're adding something new into your routine, Don't do something different 5-6 days a week, because then you don't necessarily know what's going to be working for you when you're in the gym. So you could start with something like a banana, or like a mini malt loaf, or the Rice Krispie Square is always an option I see pop up occasionally, but just something really simple that you can just grab and eat, and potentially you could even eat on the way to the gym. So you don't necessarily have to get up earlier, because we're not asking people to get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning to necessarily like have a full-blown breakfast. It could be just having something that's going to give your body readily available energy that you can use if the type of training that you're doing is high intensity, is high volume, requires a fair amount of effort. Don't be afraid to top up the tank by trying some carbohydrates pre-workout.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned before about you might have eaten too close to a session. What kind of time would you be thinking to get something in? Say you're training at 6:30. That's kind of a general time, isn't it? What kind of time would you get something in?
Again, there's going to be a little bit of flexibility here, and any runner will know that you can train your gut to eat sometimes a little bit closer to your session. But as a general rule of thumb, I find for myself and clients, around 30 to 60 minutes before, having something to eat that's small, that's like a snack, can be used and digested. Something I've commonly see is people flying in through the gym door at like 6:28 in the morning, and then they're like, oh, I haven't eaten, so I'll eat now. And then, you're then asking your body to digest food, so all your blood is going into your digestive system, when you actually want it to be in your muscles, and then suddenly it's burpee box jumps, and these people feel really uncomfortable. So if you kind of miss that 30-minute window, then maybe you don't want food, and maybe you want to consider a liquid nutrition option instead.
Yeah, liquid nutrition is a great idea as well, because it's super fast, and it's just, you would have a drink of water in the morning, hopefully, before you train. So that's an easy way to do it. Loz, do you ever kind of use any intra workout nutrition in the morning or anything, or you use that with your clients or anything?
So we find that if the sessions, like we said before, if the sessions are kind of a little bit longer, so sort of upwards of that 60, so moving towards that 90-minute session, or if it's particularly long or high volume, then something liquid that you can have kind of that can be easily sort of taken down. So again, not to make you feel uncomfortable, some cyclic dextrin, some carb powder that you can mix in with either water or a bit of fruit juice. We've got one guy at the gym at the moment who he does quite long sessions, and he has a bit of fruit juice there and just sort of sips on that as he's training, because he's there for 2 or 3 hours. So getting that glycogen straight into his muscles so that he can kind of keep going on with his sessions. So intra workout, and then I think, like we said before, we touched on a bit of hydration. So if you haven't had time, or you find that you sweat a lot, adding an electrolyte tablet into your water that you can sip on sort of while you're training can sort of help with that hydration and help keep those energy levels up.
Yeah, that's perfect. So if people are panicking, thinking, oh, I can't get anything in before my 6 a.m. session, you can always take carb powder for during that morning session, and then you're still going to get some fuel in the tank there. So that's perfect. All right, so I'm going to come back to Loz on this one. The night before is also super important, isn't it? So what tips can you give us about the meal the night before a more early morning session?
Yeah, so we touched on before about the kind of the mid-morning or the mid-afternoon slump that we kind of can see if our nutrition is not adequate. That can actually carry over from the day before as well. So if you find that you're not getting enough pre-workout, it also may mean, and you're training first thing, it also might mean the day before that your calories might have not been enough to keep you fueled and to keep that energy where it needs to be. So day before, first of all, you want to be making sure that you're having enough calories throughout the day if you know you're coming into an early morning session the following day. And then at dinner time, or in your last meal before you go to bed, you may want to make it slightly higher in carbs, and maybe slightly lower in fat, and something that will kind of get the muscle into your body, so that you've got enough stored glycogen in your liver and in your muscles to kind of keep you going over that early morning session the next day. So potentially making sure first that your nutrition's kind of on point, or you're eating enough throughout the day, and then potentially maybe something slightly higher in carbs for dinner the night before, and that way you have enough in your system to go into your session the following day.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially we have a lot of people that will train maybe last thing in the evening and then again first thing in the morning. So it becomes even more important to get that big meal in post training in the evening so that you're refueled, ready for the morning. And then I guess if you're training in the evening, you have your big dinner, you kind of want to be getting something in before your session in the morning as well, don't you? So it is kind of about making sure that we're stocked up with those fuel levels, isn't it? Okay, so the exciting bit now, types of food, our favorite topic. So what foods, Tom, would not be ideal for an early morning session? So what would be the absolute last thing you should be having half an hour before you do your training in the morning?
I mean, anything that's potentially spicy. I know that sounds a random thing, but I've seen people, like, we don't want any GI issues, and you don't want to be behind that person doing burpee box jumps if they have anything spicy. But generally, anything that's higher in fat takes longer to digest. So if we're going to eat anything, we want to prioritize some carbohydrates and maybe a little bit of protein as well, depending on the type of training that you're going to be doing. Fat is slower digesting, so we want the food that we're eating to be readily available and we can use it for energy. So yeah, carbohydrates, a little bit of protein, not too much fat, nothing spicy, as I mentioned. And as I've mentioned before, like, don't suddenly start changing everything every single day and making things random. That can sometimes cause, gut issues and uncomfortable. Yes, we do want a little bit of trial and error. But, sometimes I've had clients get up and they've messaged me and they've said, "Oh, I haven't got this in the cupboard. Do I get something on the way? Do I introduce something new?" And sometimes that can cause more problems than it's worth. Sometimes you just have to chalk it off if you have a bit of a poor session because you've underfueled a little bit, but then for the next time to make sure you've got the right things in your cupboard to make it easy for yourself in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Loz, what would you recommend? What would be your go-to?
I think, basically similar to what Tom said, and we talked about this before, but one thing I definitely wouldn't recommend, and it's easy to do because I work in a gym and we have protein bars literally on the counter as we walk in, which can be good for like something a little bit later on, but not flying in at 6:28 for a 6:30 class and trying to wolf down a protein bar for straight into going into a session is probably not the most ideal thing you can do. It does, like, it's slower digesting. It can sit heavy in your stomach. They can be a little bit higher in fat, and it's not going to do anything except make you maybe feel a bit fuller going into that session. But as far as energy levels go, it's definitely not going to do anything. So yeah, keeping it simple. Dried fruit even. So a couple of pieces of dried mango. I know I quite enjoy if I know that I'm going into an early session and I haven't had time to eat. A bit of dried mango is kind of my favorite, or a little trusty old Serene bar is my other go-to. So yeah.
Yeah, you love the Serene, don't you? We all love the Serene at PH. So yeah, always a good one. Side note, guys, the Halloween flavors are out soon. Oh, so exciting. I think there's like a chocolate orange one, isn't there? So nice. Yeah, in terms of the protein bar thing, I've definitely done that in the past when I first started training, and it's often something that we hear people saying, "Well, I'll have a protein bar before," and it's not the most ideal thing because there's a lot in it. We want to have the simplest food, really, don't we? Especially when it comes to carbs. Like, the more simple the carb, the more sugary the carb, and I have clients come to me all the time and say, "Oh, well, what about the sugar?" And this is the kind of instance that sugar is actually a great thing, like fructose, dried fruit, dried mango, dates. Dates are so good for training. So yeah, these are perfect. In terms of quick digesting, we want those sugars, we want those things like cyclic dextrin, like you mentioned earlier, Loz. Tom, you obviously do your endurance stuff. Is there anything in particular that perhaps, coming from an endurance background, if you're going to do that first thing in the morning, what would you recommend for that? Anything different or specific there?
Yeah, sometimes it may depend on the length of the session. So if someone is going out and they're doing a longer session, I would sometimes look to combine some carbohydrate sources together. So I may choose a bagel or a crumpet, and then I might top it with something like a banana. And I may add a little bit of protein in there, maybe for some peanut butter or something like that. Now, that's quite a lot of food, so I know I need to give that about 90 minutes to digest before I would go out. But there, I've got a combination of glucose and fructose, so I've got kind of quick release and slightly slower release energy to maybe fuel me for kind of 90 minutes, kind of to 2 hours or so. I'm a big fan of using liquid nutrition. because I feel like, again, you can actually get a lot of good ingredients in one product, which makes things easy for people. So you can get a lot of good carb powders that have electrolytes in as well. I don't think people realize how much you can potentially dehydrate overnight. Obviously, your blood sugar level drops as well. So you're waking up, you're dehydrated, and you're low on energy. If you're then going to the gym and you're looking to perform well, functional fitness, hitting the treadmill, doing the boot camp session, even just lifting weights, if you're dehydrated, your performance is going to be affected. If you're low on blood sugar level, your performance is going to be affected. And these things we know affect recovery as well. Some people can tolerate kind of fast acting carbohydrates a little bit differently. So you might have to use a little bit of trial and error. But even adding a little bit of salt and a little bit of lemon juice to your morning drink, people might go, oh, it sounds a bit, again, can't have too much salt in your diet. But it's the right amount at the right times will help you perform well. And I'm sure we might talk about caffeine as well in a minute. But for me, I will use caffeine as well in the morning to help with alertness and concentration. But yeah, there's a few good products out there. I like products from Velo Forte and products from SIS. This is the runner of me coming out now, isn't it? But again, these products have got a lot of good stuff in. They've got B vitamins for energy production. Some of them have got creatine in as well, which is one less thing for me to worry about taking. Carbohydrates, electrolytes. So it ticks a lot of boxes, and it's something that you can almost prep the night before. I think this is something to think about if you are training in the morning, is that trying to make your morning as efficient as possible. So what are you eating, drinking pre-session? What are you eating, drinking post-session? Laying your kit out, having everything by the door ready to go, so that it just makes it easy in the morning, makes it low stress. Because then you'll be able to see what's working for you. And you know what? You might actually get a bit longer in bed if you haven't got to faff around hunting bagels and stuff down and trying to find your running trainers at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I love that, like getting super prepared. I have a client who trains at 6:30 and I'm like, you need your bagel. So she has her bagel literally like by the door so she can eat on the way to the gym, which is, it's ideal, and it's just there and she knows it's ready to go. So amazing. Talking of caffeine, let's have a little think about any kind of caffeine type things or supplements perhaps as well. Loz, maybe you can kick us off on this one. Are there any supplements that you would recommend for pre-training first thing in the morning?
I mean, I'm a big fan of having a nice black coffee before training. In terms of specific supplements to take, sort of beyond the carb, I've not the carb powders and things like that. I've not had any personal experience sort of taking any other supplements pre-training, except for maybe some BCAAs, which can sort of elicit a bit of sort of like an insulin response. But not, they generally don't have any calories except for maybe some caffeine if you're having a Nocco or something like that. I don't know if, Tom, you can expand on any other supplements that you might take pre-training.
Yeah, sometimes with kind of supplements, they will often bring a few different ingredients together. So commonly, obviously, we'll see some sort of caffeine in there. Now, caffeine is the most proven kind of pre-workout supplement. It's a performance aid. It's going to help with concentration. It's going to reduce the onset of fatigue, whether you want to get it just in coffee, whether you want to get it in drinks, pills, etc. And again, if you're going in to try and perform well, it can help. Some people can maybe become a bit over reliant on it, so you don't necessarily need to use it 5-6 days a week. You could just use it on the sessions where, it's 5x5 back squat this morning, using it at the right place at the right time. Another one that commonly appears in the functional fitness space is beta alanine. This is the one that makes your skin tingle and your face feel a bit funny. And yes, it can work well if taken of an extended period of time. So beta alanine needs to be saturated in your muscles. You need to take it consistently, because if you take it one off, what we call like acutely, there's a very minimal effect. So caffeine has a direct effect. You can take it and you'll feel the benefits from it, or the potential benefits of it. Beta alanine is something you need to take over a longer period of time. The other one that appears maybe a bit more in kind of my kind of hybrid space of lifting and running is nitrates as well. This can, again, can be both benefits. It's something you can load, and you can take nitrates as a supplement. You can take nitrates just in your food, and it will help with performance and blood flow. But there is studies out there that show that if you take a one-off shot of nitrate, so I've seen people taking the little all the beat it shots, around competitions or max out sessions, that does have a benefit as well. So we would always recommend doing a little bit of research. Maybe ask a coach, ask a specialist, ask us. Go to examine.com. And be wary of things that make lots of claims and has lots and lots of ingredients. Again, sometimes by the time these ingredients end up in a powder or a pill, the quality's gone or the dosage isn't quite there. So, keep it simple. Caffeine, maybe beta-alanine, depending on the type of sport that you're doing, and the same for nitrates as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many kind of pre-workout supplements that are, priced super high. At the end of the day, we could actually probably just be having a black coffee before we train a lot of the time as well. So super useful on that one. Okay, so let's go down the other side of the spectrum and say, okay, what do we think about not having any food before training in the morning? Fasted training. Now, this is a topic which we could talk about for a while. So Loz, fasted training, yes or no? And what do you think?
For me, I prefer to go into a session fed. It is personal preference of mine. I wake up as soon as my eyeballs are open, I am hungry, so I do like to have something in my system before I train. In my general experience with people at the gym, I don't think we have enough consideration of that of the night before, or it's not. We a lot of our members are quite busy, and so what happens is that it is sort of left up to that pre-training early morning meal or early morning snack. So I've seen more success in my gym with people having something pre-training. So everything that we've just spoken about. So something quick, and that I find that generally gets better results in my experience. They're able to last the entire session. They don't flag halfway through a workout. And feedback from my clients and from all the 6-week program that we have come through that who have introduced a pre-workout meal or snack, prevent that afternoon slump, prevent that afternoon hunger, all those things that we sort of spoke about that kind of can happen if we're not going into a session with enough fuel.
Yeah. Okay. And Tom, fasted or not fasted, yes or no? Thoughts?
For the majority of people that are probably listening to this, that are maybe going to a CrossFit class, functional fitness, they're going to, one of these kind of trendy kind of indoor boot camp kind of places, they're just going to the gym and hitting some weights. Most people will probably benefit from having something. I will just speak from experience. I have seen a lot of people come in the gym and they train fasted because they get through their session. They currently train fast and they can get through it, but they're not thriving. They're not making progress, or progress has stalled. And we commonly see it even if someone's on a fat loss program, even if they've just got a simple goal of just going to the gym and just moving some weight around. Having something pre-training that's the right thing at the right time helps improve their performance. It helps bleed into their recovery. And on the flip side, I've seen too many people do too many fasted sessions, and I feel like it just puts their body under too much stress. They struggle to recover. They've always got these aches and pains. Let's say they're falling off the cliff in that 15-minute AMRAP at the end of a session. They're the person that's always reaching for the water bottle, 3 minutes into a workout. They're always chalking their hands every couple of minutes. And I've been that person as well, thinking that, I'm trying to watch the number of calories that I'll eat, so I just won't eat pre-training. But as we spoke about, later on in the day, if you've got low energy availability and you're sore and you're tired, you're just going to want to eat. So actually getting a bit smarter with what you're going to do around your workout might actually help you drop more weight. It sounds silly, but we see this all the time with clients on our programs. As soon as we just dial in a little bit of pre and post workout nutrition, guess what? They have a better session. They move more weight. They run faster, they jump higher, and guess what? They enjoy their training a little bit more. So that's what we're all after, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from that performance perspective, and because a lot of our clients do functional fitness, CrossFit, powerlifting, endurance stuff, the goal here is to, obviously, people may have the goal of dropping some weight or maybe even gaining weight, gaining muscle mass or anything like that. But the goal is ultimately to perform in the sport. And, you know, if you're going to fuel at any point, then surely you want to be fueling where the training is going in to perform in that sport and to get better. So it is going to stop you getting better. On the other side of things, I will just be an advocate for fasted training, only because I'm in bodybuilding prep, I will do my cardio fasted first thing in the morning, because that's kind of the aim of the game. We're trying to be in a deficit, we're trying to burn calories. However, even in that position, when I come to do my weight session, I always fuel that weight session with carbs, even in a deficit. So I think even in that perspective, if I'm doing a bit of cardio, which, you know, there's no need to perform in cardio, I'm literally just kind of walking on the treadmill or going on the stepper, you know, that's fine to do fasted because the aim is to drop weight. But even in that position, I will still be fueling my weight session. So I think it's just so important to remember that if we are training with weights, we still need to be fueling whatever the goal, whether your goal is fat loss or whatever. So yeah, super, super important to be fueling. And yeah, I think that we have pretty much covered everything, unless there's anything that either of you guys want to add there.
I just want to talk about these kind of people who get up. I'm one of them. You know, we like to get up. We like to, you know, hit the morning session. It's often because we've got somewhere to be. Normally, we've got to get back. We've got to start work, or we've got to get to the office. You know, lots of seen it. People probably fly in, do an hour. They're in the shower, grab something and go. And actually, out the other end, your body is still in this kind of fight and flight mode, isn't it? You know, post-session, your body's still quite metabolically active. And again, if we're looking at balancing hunger across the day and feeling full after breakfast, I do sometimes see a correlation between people who train early in the morning. They have their breakfast and then maybe by mid-morning, they're very hungry again. So just trying to take 15, 20 minutes after you finish your session to try and get your body into that rest and digest zone before having something to eat. You don't have to drop the barbell, grab the protein shake and neck it. You can take, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes, have a stretch, have a shower, get sorted, travel home if you need to. Then you can have something to eat or drink. You're not going to miss out on any gains by just delaying that a little bit. Let's say, if anything, you're going to feel fuller, your body's going to be able to digest and absorb the nutrients you're giving it, rather than end up, let's say, with low energy availability or increased hunger and cravings later in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point to finish on. All right. Thank you so much, guys. So for more info on our programs and plans, please head to phnutrition.co.uk and head over to our Instagram at @ph_nutrition. If there's anything you ever want us to cover, please drop us a message so that we can see what kind of info you guys want put out there. And then, of course, please share and rate the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and see you all soon.